What a beautiful day. What a fun day. I hope you are enjoying day one of our summit. We are not stopping, we are not slowing down, and we are switching gears a little bit. And I love this woman I'm about to bring out. I learned so much from watching her videos, and I've got to tell you, you are in for a treat. Deborah Morehead has been a licensed marriage family therapist for over 30 years. She has worked with thousands of clients, including some of the most vulnerable children and their families in the Los Angeles County foster care system. She has spoken and trained over 10,000 people at local and national conferences. She is the author of You Can't Get It Done by Doing What You Shouldn't Do and Happy for Life. That says it all. She has been interviewed on local NBC, CBS, and Fox TV stations. Deborah, welcome. We are in for a treat. Thank you for carving out some time to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome, Kim. Thank you so much for having me and just for putting this summit together. It's so, it's so exciting because there's so many pieces out there where, where people can grab information that can make such a difference in their life. And it's
Absolutely.
wonderful.
And when we think about building your life by design, how could we possibly do that without proper communication? And that's what you do. So I want to dive right into this. I'd love to know from your perspective, what makes it so difficult to create a healthy relationship? Because I think today we're dealing with so many external forces and there's a lot of extra pressure. So what does that look like?
Yes. Eh, The, I like that you actually bring that up because it is so true that the way our bodies are built, the way our brain is built is to be ready to survive, right? And in the days when we lived out in the open, right, it's like I need to survive this, bear attack or whatever else. What's really interesting about the world that we live in now with the social media and the work deadlines and the everything else, it's really like we are being bombarded constantly. And when it comes to how, our body just naturally is made to, to defend, to be in that space, to be pumping cortisol and to be go, go, go. Oh, what's the next thing? Oh, if this, I get this text message and this, I'm this social media thing and so we're just going. And then we have just the busyness. I mean, it's in some countries do a much better job of going, it's siesta time, or we're going on holiday for a whole month. And, certainly in the United States, but other countries, it's just this go, go, go and work, work, work. And then you have the baby, and then you have the bills, and then you have, and, even just this week, I was talking to, just an average couple, right? They have I think she's a 9-month-old and they both are working and and they're so busy. They're so busy. And I had to really talk about and remind them how important it is to regularly find those moments of connection. Because when we get busy, because and then so and here's the and now I'm really getting down to the answering of that question, because when we get so busy, we we're warding off this attack of social media and this attack of our boss and this attack of whatever else. And then what ends up happening is the reason why we get into relationships is really, as John Gottman calls it, the second stage is, are you there for me? We were looking to see if is my partner there for me? And so then, but my partner's just as busy warding off these attacks too. And so we consistently we miss each other. We miss the connections, misunderstandings, miscommunications. We consistently miss. And when we get busy, those misses build up and the hurts build up. And then what ends up happening is, one, we start to take everything personal that our partner is doing. And two, we start to feel like the hurts. And so what we do is we start to turn away from our partner. We stop counting on them as being there for us. And in fact, we will end up eventually, even if we're not careful and it's spiraled in the wrong direction too long, we will end up seeing them more as the enemy, and then we're even defining them in that way. And so, yeah, sorry, that's an ugly picture, isn't it?
So powerful. You're speaking truth now. Like, we wound her up and we let her go. Here it is. Here's the truth.
Yeah, but that's the answer, and that's what ends up happening.
So I want to talk to you about something, because we just talked a lot about those external things that could make it difficult for a healthy relationship. And the fact that you said, like, when you're missing each other, you will then kind of maybe internalize or start to take it personal. When we come into a relationship, we all come in with a past, and some people call that baggage. So I'm wondering if you can speak to those internal structures, those internal things that make it difficult for a healthy relationship.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting because they all go together. So let me, so because you're exactly right. So what ends up happening, because we do bring in, and what I refer to it as is, we come in from our own, whether you call it baggage or our history or background, and we have our own, what I call wounds, childhood wounds, or needs. They were really unmet needs from our childhood. It doesn't mean that, hopefully you had, good enough parents, but it doesn't mean that you weren't loved or cared for or whatever else, but just, our parents' imperfections created particular wounds, right? Those wounds, like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not important enough, or I'm not lovable, or right. And so we already have those. And this is what ends up happening every time there's that miscommunication, misunderstanding, hurt, let down. Where does our brain take us? It takes us right to that belief. We're now putting what we felt, with our parent. Like, let's say we had a parent who just worked so much that they weren't there for us. And so we really came up with the definition of I'm not important. Okay. So now I'm in my present relationship, right? And I'm like, hey, you know what, hon, I've been really, really busy today. It would really mean a lot to me. Would you please make sure to take the garbage out tonight because it's smelling? And my partner goes, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then I wake up the next morning and the garbage wasn't taken out. And where do you think my brain goes?
Mm-hmm.
Right away, it's like, oh, he doesn't care about me. I'm not at all important to him, right? And so that's where that's where it gets tied in, and we take it personally.
Oh, we're such complex creatures, aren't we?
We are.
It's so true. And that's why I really wanted you on this project, your contribution to the book, and also our discussion today, because a relationship is a relationship. And I've heard you refer to this. It's not just husband and wife. It's not just, partner, spouse and spouse. A relationship is a relationship. It could be a friend, an in-law, a child, an employee, employer, whatever that looks like. So I love that you bring this to the table. And, Deb, one thing I've heard you refer to tons and tons of times is something called an emotional bank account. So can you tell us, first of all, what this is and why is it important to any relationship?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because that it's something, so just so you know, the original idea came from Stephen Covey. The idea behind this is that when we first meet someone, right, anyone, and it can be, it certainly can be any of those, boss, new partner, friend, but when we first meet somebody, it even can be our sibling, right, when we may be one or two and they're zero or whatever, but as that relationship, it's about how the relationship is. When we first meet someone, it's at zero. The bank account, the emotional bank account is at zero because we don't even know each other, right? But what ends up happening in every relationship is that bank account, and if you just think about, like, even if we take it in the context of friendship, it's like I'm building a new relationship with a friend, and we say, hey, let's meet at the mall and have lunch together. And you show up, we both show up at the time we say we're going to show up. We sit down, we have a really, really pleasant time at lunch. We ask questions about each other and learn more about whatever their day is or what's going on in their lives. And we laugh and we have a nice time. Well, those actions are building our emotional bank account, right? Showing up on time, asking and being curious about the other person, just being a normal person with them and having fun. Those are all things that build the emotional bank account. When we're first dating somebody, we're on our best behavior. And so we even do more of that because we really are building up that emotional bank account. And so that's really it's just like a regular bank account, right? You are either putting deposits in and it's going up and it's going in all the right directions, or you are withdrawing. Right? And that's what becomes a problem in everything we were just talking about. When life gets busy, when you don't meet my expectation, when there's a misunderstanding, when, I do something that's forgetful or not thoughtful towards you, it's a hurt, it's a withdraw, and what ends up happening in the busyness is those withdrawals keep bringing the bank account down. And then now there's a conflict. Now something just happens and I'm down at zero, or I'm at even negative, and I have nothing to help to sustain and help get me through that. I think an example that is a real life bank account, right? I actually had a bunch of family coming over to my new home for Thanksgiving, and before they were coming, the water heater broke down. Right? And
Ouch.
yeah, right. And you know what? Think about it, right? If I had no money in my bank account, it would have ruined everything, right? I probably would have had to cancel, or I don't know what. We wouldn't be able to shower. We wouldn't be able to anything. It would have caused a lot more problems. But because I was constantly putting deposits into my bank account, I'm like, okay, I'm good enough. I've got this money to call this emergency plumber and take care of this. And everything was okay. So that's why it becomes so important that we are aware that there is always an ongoing emotional bank account, and that we need to be regularly putting deposits in so that we're feeling okay with each other about the relationship and everything else. And when we do withdraw, the apology, the repair, is actually a deposit back in, because we can't be perfect.
What an amazing analogy. And I've never heard that until I was in your world. So I was appreciative of that. And I'm the layman here. I can only imagine that as you work with your clients and as you educate people for this emotional bank account, once that's embedded in their mind, that has to be a little piece of responsibility. When I make this decision, am I adding or am I withdrawing? So I can see how that would help. It's funny because I was thinking as you were speaking, like, whoa, what happens when someone gets to the negative? I mean, we called Deb for help, but at what point in someone's relationship, at what point would you recommend that someone reaches out and works with an expert like yourself? What kinds of people do you like to see come to your front door, if you will?
Well, I'll tell you that what we tend to do as human beings and what would be better, right? Sadly, what we tend to do as human beings is we really do wait until it is all the way down at the zero or the negative. And I have seen miracles. I have seen amazing things happen when people really come in, and yes, they're at the negative, and but I have seen them build it back up and turn it around. And it is very possible to do it. But boy, is it a lot harder to do it when it's all the way down there. And certainly that's why we know the divorce rate is what it is. And, so many other, cut off relationships. And boundaries and those kind of things are important, but you really can turn things around. It is, I've worked with people at all different places, but if you're listening to this, please hear me. And I love that you even asked this question, Kim, because why do we tolerate and allow things to go negative? Let's not do that, right? If you're, and this is the biggest thing, and you kind of brought this up, the communication piece, because oftentimes what really starts to move things in the negative is that we turn towards the other person to be heard and understood, and they didn't, right? For whatever reasons, they're caught up in their own thing, they have their own opinion about something or whatever, and they really didn't listen. But it's that regular not feeling heard and understood. And what we know happens, especially in communication, is if I am, I'm going to use my trash example. If I am triggered because of my childhood baggage, and I come at you from that triggered place, is you don't even care about me. You're so selfish. You're such a jerk. I'm not even important to you and our life. And right, if I come in that reactive way, well, your only choice is to be defensive in return, right? And that's what happens more often, is that conflict spirals in the negative directions. And so if you can catch, and it early on in a relationship, if there's some of those problems, what couples keep thinking they're doing, right, is that what's that definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over again, thinking you're going to get something different. If you keep having those conflicts, the sooner you can get in and get the help from somebody so that you can shift the pattern of how you do that, and get back to that thinking about, oh, this is our bank account that we have to make sure we're building up. So that includes how we do conflict, and that includes all of the small thoughtful things that we do for each other. You can turn it around quicker, right? It's like, what's so funny in my world in therapy, right? And we know this is people often don't come into therapy until they're adults. And by adulthood, right, we have certain patterns and ways things are. And it's very possible to shift and transform, but it takes longer. When you bring in a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old that just maybe had a trauma, or had mom and dad got a divorce even, or something like that, you bring them in, and because they don't have their patterns, you can turn it around a lot quicker. Well, the same is true. The younger the problem, come in and get it turned around quicker.
I'm really, really, really glad that you just said that, because I'm thinking now, like, okay, if hopefully you're still listening to this, and you're thinking, wow, my relationship isn't that bad. I'm not at that level. We're not explosive. I don't think we're toxic. I don't think there's gaslighting. What are some of those? Like our vehicles have warning lights on the dashboard, right? And I create what we call kind of those red flag systems for ourselves so that you know, like, hey, when you start seeing these kind of patterns or this kind of behavior, it is time to intervene. From your perspective, what would some of those like red flags or those warning signs be to say, hey, let's kind of ease in with caution before it gets to this point?
I'm going to answer that with two ways, and they kind of go together. So the first is, I'm going to go with the easiest one. The first is John Gottman actually has, which is beautiful. He has what's called the Four Horsemen of the, kind of like the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse, but it's really the Four Horsemen of the, where your marriage or your relationship is going in the wrong direction. And the bottom line is, if there is regular criticism going on, if there's regular criticism going on, if there's a lot of defensiveness, well, it's your fault because you were talking to me when I was right, or whatever, any kind of defensiveness that's going on, what he calls stonewalling, but we all know what that is. I'm going to cut off emotionally to you. I'm going to silence you out for a few days because you made me mad or you hurt me. There's stonewalling. And then what's called contempt. And contempt is we know that it's even in the worst, it's slid down too far, because contempt is where I not only am criticizing you, but now I'm actually defining you in my criticism. So I'm actually, you're lazy, you're selfish, you're, whatever. I'm now defining you. So those are definitely the, like if we looked at the red flags to pop up, but the overall of what that all looks like is that we stop turning towards the other person for comfort, for connection. That's really the bigger picture when you're finding that who was your best friend that you turned to and talked to about everything is now somebody that you're like, they're not even going to be there for me anyway, and you've stopped turning towards them. That actually can be the open. I mean, there's several stages to the opening, but that can be the opening to the end of the relationship. That can be the opening to even betrayal, an affair, those kind of things.
Wow. Thank you so much for explaining that. I just want our listeners to develop a sense of awareness. And it's like, hey, when do I know it's time for that third party, intervention or mediation, if you will, so that we can, I think this day and age, it's so easy for people to have that conflict and just say, they throw their hands up and it's so easy to walk away. But let's face facts, friends. It's not that easy. It's traumatic, right? It's not fun. So that's why I'm so glad you're here. And I want to say you brought with you an extraordinary relationship cheat sheet. And friends, the link for that is literally right below this video. But Debbie, would you tell us first, what is that and who is it for?
That cheat sheet is something in my 30 years of, all of the education that I've taken and the ongoing continuing education, and then all of the people and the clients and I'll say my own therapy and everything else. I've put that together in really what is it that defines and makes the elements of a healthy, an extraordinary and amazing relationship. That the reason we all get into a relationship, and it really lists in 4 different categories. It's really a way you can actually, when I used this cheat sheet and I turned it into a pre-assessment when I was doing a couples group at one point. So you could almost, get this cheat sheet if you're single but you're in a relationship, or you want to be in a relationship. It's certainly worth it. If you're in a relationship, it's worth it to actually sit down with your partner and go through it. When I used it as a pre-assessment, you evaluate each one on a scale of 1 to 10 and kind of really see of those 4 areas, where are we weakest and what do we need to work on? And the important here, I'll say the one thing, because every couple does this, the important thing is you're not evaluating what your partner does. You're evaluating what you are doing in the relationship.
Important distinction.
Yeah, because you can only change yourself. So, but yeah, so it's definitely for if you're wanting to be in a relationship, if you're in a relationship, it's a great tool to have, because it really helps you to go, these are the elements that really make an amazing, extraordinary relationship.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise. I will tell you, just watching you closely and watching you from afar, we are very complex human beings. And the way that you approach communication and relationships, you make it look so simple. And I love that. So I can only imagine when someone has the gift of working with you, I'm sure it's not easy, but it's very, very rewarding. And there is nobody that I would point you to over Deborah Morehead. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. It's been fun being here. And I do love to make everything as practical and real as possible. So
I know that about you. So uh, thank you for your time, friends. Do grab that cheat sheet below. And it's very important that you're honest with yourself, most importantly. And real quick, do they have an opportunity to book a call with you or speak with you after that to maybe discuss that assessment, or what does that look like?
yes, absolutely. I think when you download that, there's an email address at deborah@deborahmorehead.com. I also have, just go ahead and book at timewithdebbie.com as well. So
There you have it, timewithdebbie.com. Thank you for creating a safe space for people. Have a great day. Thank you, friends.